Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watch One, and thanks for logging on. Today, we're looking at the IWC Ingenieur Chronograph Racer, 45 millimeters in stainless steel. This one differs from an otherwise identical reference 3785 that I've reviewed in the past, in as much as it features a combination natural rubber and square scale alligator leather strap on a pin buckle. It does change the character of the watch and the dynamic on the wrist. So I'm going to focus on that. With my wrist being 6 1/3 inches, 16 centimeters in circumference, I feel like I get a more precise fit with the strap. Now, the fit, the feel, the look of a strap versus a bracelet is very individual, but I will say, given that my wrist is fairly small, probably a little bit below average in size for a guy, the watch is about 14 millimeters thick, and the strap just seems to conform to the tight curvature of the flanks of my wrist better than the bracelet. While IWC makes a great modular, micro-sizable bracelet, this is just that much better for me. And with the convenience of the matching steel pin buckle, you have the ability to adjust it depending on your activity level. 1 loop, 2 loops, however many notches you want to go in the strap, you can do that without having to invoke a jeweler or worry about the micro-sizing function of the bracelet. Now, the other nice thing is, especially in hot weather, a strap can be preferable in as much as a good strap should not conduct heat into the wrist. A good strap should not trap sweat. A good strap should have relieved channels underneath, and this one does. You can see how sweat and the heat of your wrist has been managed via the inclusion of relief channels in the bottom of the strap, and that's true of both sides. You can also see the contrasting stitch abundantly anchoring the rubber to the leather. This is a very sturdy, high-quality piece. You can see the thickness of it from the side, and it feels every inch the equal of this 45 millimeter IWC made steel case. Now, IWC is a complete manufacturer. They make their cases, they make their movements, they make their movement components. So the bottom line is all of this feels of a piece, and design-wise, it's just as well integrated. Now, while it's fairly chunky, its proportions are outstanding. The IWC Ingenieur comes from the same lineage as the Patek Philippe Nautilus and the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, and it probably takes a little bit more after the Nautilus, in as much as the Royal Oak has sort of diverged in two separate model lines, the Jumbo, which more or less hews to the original Genta design, and then the 15400s, the 26320 chronographs, the 15450 mid-sizes, whereas the Nautilus has gotten larger, more detailed, more ornate, more elaborate over the year. So has the Ingenieur, and so the size has increased while retaining that essential look of the original. It's a continuity that continues to evolve rather than a design set in stone, unchanging over time like the Jumbo has more or less been in the AP catalog. But what you see on this modern, expressive, full-sized 45 millimeter Ingenieur is a highly articulated case that very much looks like a machine. Not just something an engineer would wear, but something an engineer would envision. Now, granted, we are talking about an engineer with an art for design, proportion, and detail, so don't think sterile and mechanistic. Think futuristic. Think precise. Think beautiful and beautifully finished, because that's what you're getting with this watch. There really is no facet that hasn't been finished to a high degree, from the polished chamfers of the flanks on the shoulders of the lugs to the beautiful vertically brushed and contrasting horizontally brushed segments on the side, and that's a very subtle contrast. The direction of the grain of the metal changes. Although both brushed, you can see that it's longitudinal on the sides of the lugs, vertical on the flanks of the case, contrasting with the polished steps of the bezel, and then moving inboard on top of the bezel, circular grained brushing. Likewise, recapitulated on the anthracite, or as IWC prefers to call it, ardoise dial. Now, it is a metallic dial, and the distinction here is that while it is a grained metal, it's not the sunburst that you often see in the high horology sector. Rather, it's circular, and they're concentric circular lines of grain, so that it just radiates out from the center almost like an echo from the cannon pinion. Beautiful, and the way it catches the light is quite unique. Just as reflective as a sunburst, the light plays differently across it. Now, in the high quality IWC fashion, you can see all of the indices, the hands, are applied diamond polish, so this dial has a lot of texture to it. It has several levels. Moving inboard from the tachometer scale of the bezel, you can see that there is a sort of cantilevered, concave chapter ring bearing the 60-minute calibrations, and it hangs just out over that ardoise grained metallic dial base, about the same plane as the tops of the applied indices. Moving down from that, you have the indices themselves, and down from that, you have the base of the dial. Now, each of the sub-registers is inset still further, sunken below the plane of the dial with beautiful polished chapter rings around them. What you're seeing here is a constant second subdial at 6 o'clock with a nice unobtrusive monotone date disc at 6 o'clock, but then at 12, and this helps to preserve the symmetry of the dial, you have a mono counter. So both hours and minutes on a single dial. The chronograph functions are tri-register, but you only have 2 subdials on a beautiful vertical axis that maintains the symmetry of the watch. So again, like I said, this is definitely a watch designed with an engineer's mindset, but with an artist's sensibility. Now the chronograph caliber itself is a highlight in this case. It's IWC's caliber 89361 flyback. So you have the ability, and watch the mono counter right here as I activate the flyback function. So you can actually jump the chronograph registers back to 0 and restart the timing with a single control input. You don't have to stop, start, and reset. So if you are timing something, for instance, race cars on a track, you can immediately restart the second one crosses the finish line and begins its next lap. Now, that is kind of the raison d'etre for the Chronograph Racer edition that you see here. Now, the image of the F1 race car is in tribute to the participation of IWC as a sponsor of the Mercedes-AMG Petronas racing team of two-time world champion Lewis Hamilton. Lewis, or his teammate Nico Rosberg, look like they're going to be on their way to yet another title this year. So if you want to watch that's very much of the moment, but features enduring style, function, and appeal, the Chronograph Racer from the Ingenieur line is a great option. But now talking a little bit about what's beneath this cool F1 style car engraving on the back, that caliber 89361 flyback chronograph, that is an in-house movement from IWC. 68-hour power reserve with a modern 4 Hz beat rate. It is a flyback chronograph with a date. It does hack when you pull the crown, so you can stop the seconds, synchronized precisely to a reference clock, but it has other tricks up its sleeve, featuring a free-sprung balance wheel that's exceptionally shock resistant, as you would expect from a technical style watch inspired by an aggressive high-impact sport like Formula 1. So the watch is unlikely to deviate from its timing as a result of shocks. Now sometimes on watches with traditional non-free-sprung escape or balance wheels, the index that actually performs the fine regulation of the rate can be moved by the shock. It's basically just an arrow regulator, a little lever that moves back and forth. IWC eliminates that by fixing the lever and using adjustment nuts on the balance wheel itself to make small changes to the rate of the watch. Likewise, the automatic winding system, in addition to being bidirectional and producing none of the wobble that you can get on unidirectional systems, is IWC's traditional Peloton pawl-based winding system. So inasmuch as IWC is a complete manufacturer, not only have they built the case, not only have they built the movement and its parts, but they have also invented unique, original, and efficient elements like the Peloton winding system, being architects of the design principles themselves, not just the physical material. The intellectual property is IWC's as well. There's a lot of history tied up in this watch, from its lineage to the Gerald Genta original, the jumbo Ingenieur model of the 1970s, to the Peloton winding system, to modern history, including the collaboration with the championship AMG Petronas racing team. This is a watch that is going to appeal to aesthetes and techies alike. If you're a fan of Schaffhausen, if you like a big, bold, modern sports watch, if you like the lighter, more supple feel of a strap on your wrist as opposed to a bracelet, then the IWC Ingenieur Chronograph Racer 45mm in stainless steel on a leather and rubber strap just may be the watch you want.